The following video will contain content meant for mature audiences, so if I hear you laugh at the word booty once, I'm afraid you'll have to leave. Hey everybody, how's it going? This is TUSDarryl and welcome to my review of Resident Evil Village. Now I'm going to preface this by saying that this is your typical TUS review. As you know, I'm not going to do spoilers here. I'm barely even going to go into the story, outside of the original premise that everyone knows. But if you want to hear my full opinions on the game, besides my overall impressions of it, and what I think about the game, then check out DuoQ, where Dion and I will be talking at a longer length, extensively, if you will, about Resident Evil Village. So if that sounds all well and good to you and you're ready to hear about where Chris got that awesome coat of his, let's get started. Spoiler alert, we never find out where he got the coat from. I'm sorry. Let's start with the general synopsis of the plot. Resident Evil Village takes place 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. Ethan Winters returns as the protagonist and is thrown into yet another series of unfortunate events. Long story short, Chris Redfield shows up and pops Mia 5 times in the head after she's already lit up like a Christmas tree by a barrage of bullets that came out of seemingly nowhere. Then he proceeds to take Mia and Ethan's kid, Rosemary. After a car wreck, Ethan then finds himself in the mysterious village where all kinds of weird things are going on. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, I'm not going to leave it at that. One of the weird things going on is the tall lady that everyone has fallen in love with. That aside, Ethan Winters is now in the village looking for his daughter, Rosemary. And that's where you take control. Well, full control, that is. Moving on to graphics. Now, the footage that you're looking at right now is the lowest settings that I can run at a comfortable rate on my computer. It's also locked to 30 frames, so if it looks a little choppy, that's why. Otherwise, I was running 60 just fine for a while, and then, well, dips happened during certain cutscenes where the game would lag horrendously, but the audio would progress farther. Then you think, I'm going to keep that flub in there. I'm human. Despite that, the game looks really good. And that's mostly due to the attention to detail that is like in every scene, in every area you're in. The game could look like but the amount of things in the environment that kind of sell the scene really, really helps immensely. I wish I could say this in more technical jargon or detail, but I can't. I know some things, but not all things. Either way around, the game looks gorgeous, and for the time that I was running it on medium settings, I think is what my computer can handle. Curse the lack of new graphics cards. It looked good. It looked real good. And that was just on medium settings. It could have looked a lot better, I'm sure. Makes me wish I got a PS5 as well. Oh, wait. All in all, ever since Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, even 3 Remake, you understand what the RE engine could do at this point, but it's sexy. That's all I gotta say. I'm gonna steal Dion's loose use of the word sexy and just throw it at this thing, because if there's one thing that could be an all-encompassing word to describe how the game could look at its highest potential, it is sexy. And that's just from what I've seen from people who could actually run it at that state. It looks good. That's all you need to know. Moving on to sound. Despite the fact that this game isn't as scary as Resident Evil 7, I'd say that the sound definitely reminds you that you may have more guns in this game, but we're still a horror game at our core. Random things dropping in the distance, you standing completely still, thinking, I didn't move, and there's no enemies near me. I don't hear any snarling. What was that? What was this? What was that? Oh God, it's all around me. No, it's nowhere around me at all, but it is at the same time. It's this constant feeling that something's always happening around you in some subtle way that keeps the environment from feeling dead. So you're never gonna feel alone despite being alone, in a way, if that makes sense. That said, this game doesn't go as far as Resident Evil 7 did in terms of horror, like I mentioned before, outside of one gameplay section, which I am not going to spoil here. Nah, I'm not going to spoil it here. You can watch it, DuoQ's video on that on my other channel with Dion. Sound-wise, the game is crisp. It's very rare when things are so chaotic that you don't know what's going on. I feel like I say the same thing in regards to sound every time. And maybe if someone was more, technical. Again, I always run into this problem in my reviews. Do I need to be more technical? Do I not need to be more technical? I don't know. I feel like the technical jargon kind of takes people out of it, but at the same time, I feel like the technical jargon would help some other people. I don't know. I'm talking out loud. This is supposed to be a review for Resident Evil 8. Ignore me. You could have skipped this portion. Why are you still here? In all seriousness, though, I wasn't joking around when I said that the game makes sure that you feel like there's always something going on around you, even when you're by yourself. Combat-wise, all the guns sound like they have some punch, some kick, and some meat to them. The 3 words I always want to hear when associated with weaponry in video games. Not to mention that the gore sounds particularly juicy. You could even say I took a liking to it. My silence is me cringing at myself. From here, I'm going to skip over music, since I don't think that outside of one track towards the end of the game that I adore, there isn't really much going on that is notable, in my opinion, for music. Like, it still sounds good when it's there. It's just, it didn't blow my socks off outside of that one track towards the end. That song at the end, if you've heard it, you know the one I'm talking about. Otherwise, serviceable. It does its job. Barring save rooms, there's not going to be music playing every time you enter a new area. It's a horror game at the end of the day. So now here we are, the thickest part of the review. Mine's out of the gutter. I'm talking about gameplay. If you've played Resident Evil 4, this is essentially Resident Evil 4 2. In terms of how the game flows and how it plays. A lot of gameplay mechanics from Resident Evil 4 are borrowed and put in this game, as well as a few nods to how Resident Evil 4 progressed are put in here as well. It's a love letter / spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4. I don't have a problem with that. That's a good thing. I loved Resident Evil 4. And personally, I don't think this game necessarily needed to be super scary, to be honest. I would have preferred that in some cases, because sometimes I couldn't tell if it wanted to be a horror game sometimes, and other times if it wanted to be more of the action-y side of Resident Evil. But I think they balanced it very well here. You get more guns, you get the item management system that you got in Resident Evil 4. You have the Duke, who, I'm going to go ahead and say this part because he was in the trailers as well, supplies you with weapons and whatnot. He's the merchant. He's the equivalent of the merchant from Resident Evil 4, which is really cool. Navigation flows in a lot of the ways that you would expect a Resident Evil game to flow, or at least Resident Evil 1 through 3 / Code Veronica, barring maybe 4 through 6. I guess I could have just said 7, but I'm just saying that there are aspects of Resident Evil 4 that are here and aspects of Resident Evil 7 that are in here. And strangely enough, they work very well together. Enemies are much more varied in this game than they were in Resident Evil 7. You have the Lycan enemies, you have the big Lycan enemy, you have the 4 lords, Leah Dimitrescu, Angie / Donna, Moro, and Heisenberg. And I guess if you want to count her, Mother Miranda as well. These are the people you'll be taking down in the game. And each of their fights are going to be very specific to what they can do. And I thought that was really cool. I'd go into more detail about it, but again, spoiler territory. That said, even the average enemy can be a little difficult sometimes, especially when you're overwhelmed like you are in the beginning of the game. I am going to say that much. There is a portion in the beginning of the game where it's essentially last for as long as you can. If you remember Resident Evil 4 and how that progressed, then you'll know what I'm talking about. You're overwhelmed at first, don't have a lot of options, and you're kind of just making your way through the village to the best of your ability while also trying to survive until the bell tolls and you ask if everyone went out to bingo. The puzzles in the game are pretty straightforward, pretty simple, outside of maybe a few that require you to think outside the box. One in particular that I really enjoyed, despite it still being pretty simple, but still more effort than I've seen in modern Resident Evil to this day, more or less. And mind you, that's not a jab at the difficulty of the puzzles in the game or whatnot. It's just something that I personally would have preferred. Having easy puzzles is completely fine, as well as having really difficult ones. And sometimes I just like an offset of here's some easy puzzles and here's some difficult ones. This game just kind of felt like it leaned more in favor of the easier ones. Outside of, actually I said 1 before, but I'm actually going to say 2. One of them I'm going to say now has to do with the really scary portion of the game. I loved that one. That was great. You don't get a lot of that later. So enjoy it when you get to it. All in all, is the game fun? Yes, it's a blast, and I really enjoyed it. The story could have used some help here and there, and there were some weird writing decisions where originally I was trying to be in defense. I'm going to speak as non-spoilery as I can, but I try to be in defense of some decisions that were made in the writing and others that I'm just like, and now I've let the game kind of sit for about a week. I can agree, yes, there were definitely some weird writing decisions made that I'm just like, okay, you could have done that a little better. You could have maintained one thing without giving up the other. Let's leave it at that. Another thing of good news, I didn't encounter any bugs in my playthrough. I don't know about Dion, but I didn't encounter any bugs in my playthrough. Okay, I guess technically speaking, I did encounter bugs, but okay, I'm gonna stop being cheeky. Let's just get on with the final verdict. I honestly, outside of nitpicking at this point, I can't see anything wrong or bad or anything I actually disliked about Resident Evil Village. It's a really fun game and really good, and I highly recommend it. So yes, it's a go for it. Bet you didn't see that coming, huh? Now, I haven't gotten around to playing the Mercenaries mode, and I'm still in the middle of my second playthrough of the game, and most likely that's just going to be a very slow and, I won't say monotonous, but just a really passive playthrough, since I have other games that I have to finish, other things I have to do and whatnot, so the game's just going to kind of be that thing I peek into every now and then. But with that said, there is the Mercenaries mode, which is free with the game. You unlock it after you beat it the first time. And if you're interested at all, I guess, there is also Resident Evil Verse or RE-verse, Reverse. I don't recall when that's supposed to drop. I know it was supposed to drop on launch with the game, but they delayed it. So either way around, if you're interested in that, give it a whirl. I might give it a whirl. Either way around, it's a free multiplayer mode added onto the game, and what makes this different from Resident Evil 3 Remake is that while we didn't ask for this new multiplayer mode or whatever, we still got we got Mercenaries, and the main game has some serious replayability, unlike Resident Evil 3 Remake. I'm not going to stop kicking it. I'm sorry. I liked it. I'm just not going to stop kicking it. But with that, I'd like to hear your opinions on the game. Did you enjoy Resident Evil Village? Is there anything that I glossed over that you might want me to go into more detail about in a spoilery video? Maybe dual Q related, maybe not dual Q related. You could do it either way around. Just let me know in the comments below. But with that said, I hope you all have enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl, and I'll see you guys next time. See you later.